Hey, how's it going? This is Jack Butler. Thanks for tuning in. I'm at the beach. This is Ocean Beach in San Francisco. It's Friday night. So I'm going to give you a light message. And I apologize if there's a little bit of sound rustle with the wind. My message this evening is about love. Come on, let's talk about love. Who doesn't want to talk about love? I want to live in a world where business people can talk about love, and people can talk about loving their coworkers and loving their company culture and loving their mission and loving what they express in the world and loving each other and standing for a world where we love each other. I want a world where civic leaders can talk about loving the whole, loving humanity, loving our one human family. So let's talk about love. Just a quick mention, I'm here because I've just come from a photo and video shoot in Twin Peaks in San Francisco with Brian Ashby. And if any of you are looking for awesome video and photo work and someone who's just really good at pulling juicy, core, essential stuff out of you, I recommend Brian. I'll put a link to his work beneath this video. This is my video, dodgy production quality. There you go. But I wanted to talk to you about love and some of the obstacles to love and why. I guess I just want to talk about love. So, I mean, maybe there's no why. Maybe I just want to talk about love. Maybe that's okay. So, I'm interested in love because it seems to be just such a deep part of the human experience. And there's a whole thread in human development which seems to me this expanding circle of who gets our love. You know, so in integral theory speak, we talk about that as being egocentric, ethnocentric, nation-centric, world-centric, this expanding centrism, these expanding circles of moral concern or love. And normally there are some people or some things in this world that consciously or unconsciously we deem unworthy of our moral concern, unworthy of our love. You know, historically, and actually not just historically, because this still goes on, you know, people of a certain race or religion would be outside the circle of moral concern. So people think, oh, if you're not in my group, that makes you ripe for criticism, or it makes you ripe for hate, or that we can project our issues onto you, or you're the scapegoat or the problem. And the thing is, we all have this at some level at some times in our lives. I don't care how enlightened, I don't care how loving you consider yourself to be. There are probably times when people are momentarily even pushed outside the circle of your moral concern, where you hold them in judgment or contempt or anger or maybe hatred, or you're probably clever, right? So you probably don't have that as an obvious outgoing reactivity, but there may be snarky comments that you hold inside. There may be little ways that you seek to undermine people, even if you don't in your actions, but just in your internal dialogue. Or you store something up and you think, you know what, one day I'll use that. Or people perpetrate something against you that you don't like and you store it up and you don't process it, you don't fully metabolize it. And so there's a little glitch in the system with this person. There's a little tear in the relationship. And maybe you're not willing to be intimate or vulnerable or forward in doing the often hard work to repair that. And I also want to tell you that repair is a skill that you can work at. And the more you repair, which means to come back into loving contact with someone, to put the relationship back on an even keel, or to confess, you know, cough it up, throw it up, talk about it, clean it up, that kind of process. If we don't do that, then what we are creating at some level is emotional distance. And we need to be able to vary our emotional distance. There is something effective about doing that, and we want to do that consciously. And oftentimes when we distance ourselves emotionally, it's a protection, and it's one that we needed in upbringing. It's an ego defense. It's an ego protection, and it also tends to keep us from expressing fully our hearts and our love and our feelings and our experience to other people. And I and other people are taking a stand for a world where we express more of what's really going on. We express more of our experience, and therefore we are more willing and wanting to be available for other people's experience, for knowing what's really going on, and for being in some kind of conscious relationship. It's not just with an intimate partner, with all people, or as many people as possible, that we're actually available for some kind of mutual impressionability and authenticity and presence. And that's what we're showing up for, and that's what we're calling forth in ourselves and other people. And if that isn't love, you know, actually you're willing to attune and be compassionate to another person's experience, not to feel that you know someone else's experience until you dig into it, and that you're not the authority on someone else's experience, and that you actually own to yourself and increasingly to other people your own experience and what it is like to be you, and what What's coming up for you? And particularly your emotional experience, because it's harder. We'll often be happy to stay in the plane of relating that we could call informational. So I share with you some information. I tell you about the article I just read. I tell you about some cool economic theory. I tell you about a story that my dad told me when I was young. And it's obviously really important that we push back and forth this kind of information. And we may also want some other things in our relationship. We may want more of an emotional connection where I'm more attuned to your emotional experience and I reveal more of my own emotional experience, and I'm not afraid of my authentic emotions. I'm just noticing the fog rolling in here. Authentic emotion means that as emotion arises in us, we are attuned to it, we're with it in the moment. And oftentimes when emotion arises, we can be with it. It might be sadness or disappointment. It could be frustration, anger, joy. And then it tends to pass, and we don't need to identify it with it. This is a whole part of the spiritual teaching, right? It's not to identify with our thoughts, not to identify with our emotions. And also we want to be more emotionally revealed because it's deeply satisfying. It's deeply satisfying to be seen and to be witnessed and to be in communion with someone else around what's really going on for us and what's particularly important and deeply important to us. It's not to say that everyone in the world can do that with you. I just wonder if you might be wanting more of that in your life, and if you can create some of the conditions and culture where that's possible. You might want to stand for a culture where that is more possible, where you take more risks with revealing your experience. You take more risks with showing people your heart. I saw this beautiful cartoon image. So there's two people in a cartoon, they're stick people, and one says to the other, "I'll show you mine if you show me yours." And so you think they might be talking about their butt or something like this, and actually the next frame is they've got their big glowing hearts. And it's like, it takes risk to show people our heart, and not always people are good with it, and sometimes people are uncomfortable with the depth of our experience, or it may bring up something for them, or it may be something that they don't feel permission to show or share, or they may project onto our experience, or they may reject us, in part or wholeheartedly. So revealing your heart is not without risk, and we want to have discernment about where and when we do that. And I think we want to take a stand for doing and being that more of the time. I want to stand for a world where politicians, business people, civic leaders, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, community leaders, and all of us can stand up and talk about love in a grounded, pragmatic, action-oriented kind of way. And it's not woo-woo, and it's not some kind of altered state experience that you can't really connect with. It's people talking about what unites us and how we orient to one another and how we hold one another. And so this often comes up like, who is worthy of your love? Who do you include and who do you not include, and why? Nowadays, most people are comfortable to include and extend in their circle of moral concern people of different colors, race, religion. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment in culture around a deeper understanding of transgender people. And I see this as the march of our human evolution, that as we become a more mature humanity, we can be with more things in more people. And it's actually a hallmark of development in my experience. How able are we to be with people of all different sorts and actually be with their experience and not need them to be different? We might invite them to see parts of themselves they don't see, or we might give feedback from a loving place. But we actually can be with people and we don't get triggered by how they show up. And hey, I have not mastered this. I'm not telling you from the top of the mountain. I'm telling you from someone who's working hard on the mountain face and who thinks it's deeply valuable work to be more with our and other people's experience and to be more fully expressed more of the time and to love what is, to love. And love said differently in this context could be acceptance. Can we accept what is? Can we accept life as it is? Which doesn't mean that we don't burn with a desire and passion to make it better, to be an evolution of conscious change in the world, to invite forth something better, to bring our gifts and mission and contribute something to the world around us, our communities and humanity. And it may also mean that we can do that from a place of loving acceptance, that reality is what reality is right now, and I don't need to bring too much of my subjective filter to that. Whilst also realizing that my experience is deeply subjective and personal. I have a personal essence which is unique to me, and others have a personal essence that's unique to them. So I want to talk about love. I think it's decent. I think it's exciting and juicy, and it's where the action is, and it's where so much of our human development is, and it's where we shut ourselves down and where we become inauthentic and underexpressed, and we go to sleep on parts of ourselves, or we sense that it's more convenient to talk about productivity and strategy and visions and plans and execution. And actually, sometimes we want to talk about how we are with each other and what culture we're creating. And I'm all for the structures of our business and the structures of our law and the structures of the way that we do civic and political life, reflecting an underlying sense that we actually have a love for one another, we have a moral concern for one another, that we care for one another, and that's the kind of world that we want to create. And if you want to be part of that, please take advocacy for that in your own life. And I'd love to know your experience of how this shows up for you. Feel free to ping me or leave a comment. And yeah, here's to maybe this weekend as it comes up, maybe there's just one way that you can express more care, love, and compassion in your life. One thing that you maybe haven't said, or one way that you know that you tend to not take the risk. And maybe in the right context and container, you can take a risk. Love is risky, because to love fully and openly, does risk being hurt and being vulnerable. And that's also where life is, right? Life is vulnerable. Life is inherently risky. There is no real progress without risk. There is no real experience, deeper experience, without some kind of risk. And, I know people get really excited about going out and nightlife and the latest this and the coolest that and hanging out with the best people and the coolest people. And I've come to sense that a lot of that is actually, there's a deeper desire beneath that, which is to do with intimacy. And it's to do with being more revealed and seeing more in other people and having more of the conversation orient to the relational field, which means not just information, not just emotional content, but actually what is the experience right now of you and I being together. And that gets called different things. It gets called present moment experience. It gets called authentic or conscious relating. It gets called intersubjective meditation. You can call it what you want, but I think it's pretty neat. And if you haven't tried it, I'd encourage you to look into it. And if you are trying it, all the power to you. How can you invite more of that forth in your life? So go forth this weekend. Be well, be bold, live passionately, live with grace, be present, be yourself with love.